go to your left, Jody. Okay, then come on forward, ahead of Madeline a little bit.
He insisted we stand in for ourselves. I think that that's where his thread to us became more established.
You're gonna fire, we'll see if it's at the same spot.
I think that he then began to understand people's moods and, you know, if they fainted, if they zigged instead of zagged, he knew it.
Action.
And at first, you'd be sometimes confined in the frame.
Is that about the same spot?
But ultimately, that was a very freeing thing for me because it allowed me to express internally whatever it was that was going on.
All right, we have Jody marked, Madeline marked.
Yes, sir.
Without having to reach out to externals.
Ready, and background, action. Jody, ready. Action.
Michael's a general, and you need a general to do that kind of work.
Have your eye line be towards me, in this direction.
The mustering and organizing and controlling day after day after day of a huge group of people. You feel that you're pitting yourself against something because every day so many different things try to thwart you in your endeavor.
Ready!
And Michael's the person to be with in those kind of situations because there'll be no surrender.
Okay, let's reload. Once again, please.
We trained about 75 guys who became our infantry, and we actually cross-trained them to be English infantry, French infantry, English artillery, and French artillery.
My task for Michael Mann and the last of the Mohicans was to build a military unit. In fact, I built it after the model of the 35th Regiment of Foot.
You better fall in. You better be silent.
I had to then take these 30 reenactors that I had sort of recruited. They weren't performers, and I didn't want them to be. There was no call for them to be actors. There was call for them to be soldiers.
Don't shoot, bayonets! Ready! Develop! Recover!
And the only way to build them is quite simply to build their endurance, to build their physicality until they understand how tough that life was.
How do we feel, 35th Regiment of Foot? Kill the fucker, sir!
They had slow-burning black powder. So to move a projectile, you needed an immense amount of it. To contain an immense amount of it, you needed an immensely heavy and large mortar, which required many oxen and men to move.
The cannons that the French are firing came from Fort Caroline, which we renamed Fort Ticonderoga. Those were brought down on barges, but half the journey is overland. 20 to 30,000 pound cannons manhandled on rolling logs by an army to assault Fort William Henry.
The situation is his guns are bigger than mine and he has more of them. They keep our heads down while his troops dig 30 yards of trench a day. When those trenches are 200 yards from the fort and within range, he'll bring in these 15-inch mortars, lob explosive rounds over our walls and pound us to dust.
We've built about 20 cannons and 5 mortars that are huge. And they're the right size, but they're not made out of solid iron the way they were.
We had to invent how to build these cannons and fire them so we could fire them and something would come out and they'd behave like real cannons.
We used black basketballs for the mortar shells. Because one of the shots Michael wanted was, he wanted to see the mortar shell going through the air up to the fort. So, and actually got to where it's so good we could hit the fort with it. So then we shot a lot of them then.
I recall seeing a truckload of cannons come in, and Michael rushed outside the production office to take a look at these cannons, and they looked terrific to me. Great 25-pounder and 12-pounder Napoleons and that sort of thing. One of the very first sequences we did was a forest ambush. The British were in linear formation, moving along a forest track. The forest track had high ground on both sides.
You could just feel the tension and the anticipation, the absolute adrenaline pumping in everybody alongside those hills like that. And it was like the real thing is going to happen here very soon.
Then that one Indian comes running out and goes straight into the line and whacks that guy. That was just woof. More than just hundreds coming in. That one guy just doing that was unbelievable.
The film is actually a Western, if you think about it. It's a Western in the sense that this was as far west as whites had come. I think a lot of filmmakers these days don't like to go to distant locations. They want to do what's handy.
We've learned many wilderness tricks in this movie, such as getting on boats.
Michael tends to find what's honest, even if it's the most difficult path.
This is before GPS, and so we flew around in a helicopter with a LORAN device that told you where you are in degrees, minutes, and seconds of arc on the planet Earth. So if we're spotting it from the air, now we have to find a way to get to it from the ground. And how do you know you are on this one mountaintop amongst 17 little peaks and valleys all over the place?
We've been flying over forest for I don't know how many hours. I'd never seen forest like that, ever. The atmosphere was heavy. I remember a sense of suffocation as we landed. Thought, we're going into this forest, we're not coming out for 6 months.
Because the fort had to be on the frontier, i.e. it's a wilderness fort, that means you can't see roads, you can't see people's boathouses, you can't see contrails of airplanes, you can't see highways. And you had to be someplace forested. We found it in the Blue Ridge Mountains in western North Carolina. We cleared a 40-acre site. We used much of the wood to build the fort. So the fort was completely constructed inside and out on 3 sides.
And it made no sense to build this out of anything except original materials because it was cost-effective and authentic. So the fort, Cameron's cabin, log cabin, was built out of hewn logs.
Everything was built for real almost. I mean, Fort William was built for real, with real logs. The homestead was built with real logs. The Indian village was built with the bark of the trees. We even waited till the spring when the bark came off the trees. It was all from Mother Nature. Everything was from nature.
Wolf Kroger knew exactly what I wanted to get. That it wasn't just a set. It's not just something you walk through or look at. This is a real place. And he understood how important the detail is because when you're on the set, you believe it.
It got very rainy and muddy, which is also a good thing because all that mud stuck everywhere. So it was a feeling of reality. You know, once you go in the studio, you're lost. I mean, you try to recreate it and it's never the same.
We did do a lot of research working with some people at the Smithsonian to get the Huron aesthetic and the Abenaki aesthetic and the Mohawk aesthetic to be able to have our people feel, whether it's an extra or a character, feel like they really are an individual who has expression that he manifests in the war paint he puts on, the tattoo he wears, and that he comes from someplace, that he comes from a culture that has the characteristics that cultures truly do have.
Need a big one?
And we generated a set of characteristics that extended from war club design to the way they wore their hair, to the fabrics that we manufactured of every single tribe. It was generated from anthropological research and Catlin's prints from the 1820s to try, in our feeble way, and I mean feeble way, to capture this unbelievable aesthetic.
There's a very famous painting called The Death of Wolf.
in which he's lying there, and off to his left is a Mohawk. Now, that Mohawk has staggering fabric design and tattoo patterns on him, and we used that extensively. So we would use people who appeared in the left bottom corner of paintings.
Michael is always extremely synthetic when he introduces a cinematographer to how to find the language for that particular film. To a point in which, for instance, for Last of the Mohicans, he gave me a couple of books. One was a book on Thomas Cole, the late 1800 painter. And the other one was a book on Albert Bierstadt, landscape painters. They were showing the very tiny human being in the middle of the power and the dimension of nature.
When we're out in the wilderness, really sort of evokes a feeling that the characters and the landscape are inextricable.
Alice, should we rest?
Absolutely.
The character's volatility really had a sense of naturalism about it that reminded me of the setting, and vice versa. I couldn't separate them. You felt the weather, you felt the color of the leaves, the shimmer of the water, all these kind of things. And you didn't feel like those people didn't belong there.
The challenge was to make it look like you are in the 18th century, and light is by fire. It's firelight. It's not tungsten light, and it's not pervasive. It's very sourcey. And in daylight, in an interior, there are no lights. So consequently, if you're where the sunlight is coming in, you're lit. But if you're sitting towards the back of the room, as is General Webb with Magua and the shadows, you're sitting in the shade. It should look like it's dark. And there's so much period kind of vibe and feeling you get when it looks like, wow, this looks real. You don't know exactly what it looks. It's because the lighting is real.
Michael has a very good sense of music as an element of movie making, and he does actually know instinctively what is going to aid and abet his vision of the movie. He'd say, I don't want to qualify the action. Do not score the drama. He didn't want the music to overtly state what was obviously on the screen.
We were searching for the theme and couldn't really find the basic melody. And my wife Summer called, and she said, I just heard a contemporary piece of Irish folk music that I think is really great. And you should listen to it. And I tracked it down with something called the Gale, G-A-E-L, and I said, this is great, we acquired it, and I brought it to Trevor. And he played it, and I said, play the harmony. He played the harmony. I said, okay, the harmony is the main theme. The song itself is going to be the love theme.
I started stacking up other ideas which could all be counterpointed. So they stacked up in much the same way as Michael's telling of the story. You have so many strands going. You have the Hawkeye, Cora love aspect, you have the Uncas and Alice, you have Magua, you have the trappers, you have the colonials, you have the British, the French, and so on. So you have all these disparate elements, and that's why I think people compare the movie as a symphonic piece, because you've got these counterpointed stories running concurrently, just like a piece of music.
I knew I wanted Celtic music. I mean, that was a foregone conclusion, given Hawkeye's origins. And so the hypnotic repetitions at the end of the film, when Uncas is pursuing Magua, who's taken Alice away, everything leading to the end, that whole 12-minute, the Celtic basis of that, the repetition of it, to me has tremendous sound.
It starts out with these chords, and then it starts to build and build and build, introducing all the themes that I use in the film.
And so the movie has many, many conflicts and crises all rolling into one ultimate one, which is what are all the indigenous people to do? And that is a question that's existential. Like, you know, we are facing the end of our existence. What are we to do? As we drive to the end in the fatal battle between Chingachgook and Magua, there's a moment in which clearly Chingachgook has destroyed Magua's body. And before he kills him, the two men look at each other. Chingachgook, a Mohican, Magua, a Huron, look at each other. And in that gaze is the whole of this content. There is no answer. It's a horrible, tragic conflict to which there is no solution. Their whole past is collapsing into that present moment, and everything that they have been and everything they want to be is on the line in that present moment. It's one of those kinds of dramatic situations. In the final scene of the film, we're looking at wilderness, and wilderness is the frontier. And the frontier moves like time. The frontier is conflict between the past and the future, and it's a rolling zone, and it's rolling west in the Americas, and that's what they're looking. They're looking at the future, and their individual lives will continue on, and people will come after them, and they will have struggles, and they will have lives, just as we all do. We were trying to make their lives come alive and make a piece of history come alive.